One. And we are recording with my home
Live.
with my we are with my homie, my pal, Mr. Roger Williams on Sunday, July 30th, 2023 at 4:13 p.m. Eastern time. Roger's the author of my favorite book, The Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect. I know through the gaming stream, we've turned on a couple more people to it. I think was it Fwimple? I think Parallels. We've got some more people to read it and they understand I'm not insane. It is a fantastic book. And but I was just about to ask you, it has nothing to do with so in today's show is going to be about Papercrete. Was
hmm
the reason why there were no shows yesterday. As I've been telling people, I just didn't sleep Friday, not a single second, and I have no idea why, and I don't give a shit. It's just whatever. I didn't, so I can't believe.
Sometimes that happens. That's,
Yeah, so I
yep.
laid back down yesterday and was like, I'm still having trouble falling asleep, and I think I conked out at 2 p.m. Woke up at 11 a.m. and was like, Jesus. So, but I was about to ask you, and this has nothing to do with the show. Have you ever watched Steve MRE 1989 on YouTube? He's this guy that just reviews MREs, and
Oh,
it's an incredibly addictive channel. Uh,
that does sound interesting.
dude, it is. He is so good at it, and he has such a legitimate passion for it. And you can hear him when he opens up like stuff you'd never think. He'd be like, "Now this is really cool." It's like a 1955 British Air Force MRE. He's like, "Now normally from this set, you'll never see this." And he's so good at it. And some of them are just funny because they're gross. He'll eat like he'll eat them. So long as they're not rotted, he'll eat them. The oldest one he ever ate was an 1899 Boer War fucking, and
Wow.
the joke was like, because he took like a month off after, people were like, is Steve dead? And like, but he recently did one just the other day of U2 MREs, and they're unlike any of the other ones because they're just tubes of like apple pie or whatever, right? And they have to stick it through their helmet and shit. And I was watching those when I couldn't fall asleep, and I know I'm hungry when the MRE videos make me hungry. When he's eating like fucking freeze dried carrots from Vietnam, and I'm like, oh, that looks fucking good. Um,
I'll I'll trade you. One of my favorite YouTube channels is a guy named Doug who has a channel named I Do Cars.
is that the
And
engine one?
yeah, every Saturday night he tears down an engine, a core to find out why it's a core and not a
Yeah,
working engine. And sometimes there's exploded pistons and carnage and
yeah,
gravel in the oil pan and shit. And then sometimes it's more subtle because you
yeah,
never know. It's
yeah,
like sometimes there's what it says like, oh, there's an inspection port
yeah.
because it threw a rod through the side of the engine case or something. I have learned more about engines from that channel than from any other source. It's amazing. He's torn down the engine that is in both my personal and my work car. Like he's torn down three of them.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, that's how that works. And,
And there is, I think you do start to see the real value in terms of like a content creator of being passionate
mhm.
about, you know, as you said the other night, you're like, you should always make content for yourself. As Stan Lee said, write what you want to read, not what other people, and you'll attract the right people. I don't care about MREs, but he is so passionate about them
He
that you
makes
go
you passionate about them.
the
It's
passion
like,
starts to bleed. Whereas you look at it, you go, yeah, it's an MRE. He'd be like, now this is interesting because you can see what happens is like the air seal used to break. So starting after 81, you actually start to see, and like he did a pizza MRE that I was like, yeah, that makes sense, like a Lunchable or something. And it was like the long sought after, and people were commenting like veterans. They're like, dude, I remember they told us they were gonna make this in Desert Storm. Like Iraq War veterans were like, I can't believe they finally made the pizza. And you start to there's this whole fucking micro community around MREs and stuff. It really is. But
well, if
that,
you've been in the service over, then
yeah,
you're eating them every day. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that becomes important to
Yeah,
you.
but you start to see, and it really is like, and I don't care about MR, but then you just start to, even little things like the
You
package
realize
DM.
people are like living on this shit. That's
Yeah,
it's that's their that's everything as far as food for them.
Yeah, and
You know,
I always just had this
they can't
incorrect.
freaking go to McDonald's in
Yeah.
Iraq. So
And so like I always had just this incorrect assumption. I just thought like I was like, yeah, like K rations, like World War I or World War II, the coffee, like the fucking tin mug. But then it's like he did right when the war started, he did like a 2022 Ukrainian one, and then he did like a Russian one. And you realize just how advanced they are. And it's like, and they you have to eat the whole thing because the whole thing is also about like they're all artificially like juiced up with vitamins and stuff. And it's but you just see
going
all
on the
the
battlefields.
yeah, but no, but you just see it all, and it's like I think the importance is yeah, you can tell when the passion comes through of the person. Like he could be talking about engines, and it's like I never
Mhm.
thought I cared about this, and it's I guess to tie it in, we could say that that's what these Professor Roger episodes
Yeah.
are. I mean, people love them because you not only do you know the topic, and it's often stuff that goes over my head, and I go, I don't care. But if you bring up, yeah, no, paper as concrete, the first thing I did was like, we're doing an episode on that because I know you're gonna make it interesting. So with that, I'm gonna shut the fuck up, Roger. Take it away.
Right. Well, in that vein, something that you probably don't know about me, it's never come up between us, is that for much of my life, I have been a major alternative housing nerd. Uh, Anything that, suggested better, cheaper, easier to make housing was fascinating to me. So I was like geodesic domes, underground, earth ships, which are made out of tires, anything like that. I was all over it. And of course, Papercrete, which is our topic du jour. So today's presentation will be in three sections. I'm going to talk because I have no show and tell about what other people have done, because other people have done quite a bit, and I have actually personally gone and observed some of it. Then I'm going to talk about some of the stuff that I did in my garage, which some of which was actually pretty fucking great. Just saying. And then I'll talk about why I am living in a stick-built house in a subdivision instead of an alternative house out
Hmm.
in the country. So to start, papercrete was invented in the 1920s, and it was patented, and the guy who patented it didn't make a dime off of it because it's too cheap. Uh, Basically, you pulp paper in a hydropulper, put Portland cement in it. The Portland cement makes the paper stable. Once the paper dries out, which takes a really long time, uh, then it has a surprisingly high tensile and compressive strength, and you can use it as a bulk construction material. Well, not a lot was done with it, but until the 70s and 80s, and this is when you started to get the flower kids and the hippies and all in, and everybody was building geodesic domes. This is, and this is where I came into it, because this is when I reached, as I was in high school in the 70s, and so the 70s and 80s, it's like I had major portions of Dome Book 2 memorized, and I knew all the math about geodesic domes and stuff. Uh, but people were starting to make papercrete, and the magic moment for papercrete actually occurred when a guy named Mike McCain invented the standard mixer for papercrete, which is called a toe mixer. All right, so before the toe mixer, if you were building a house out of papercrete, you would probably have something like a 96-gallon garbage can with a 1 or 2 horsepower motor and an impeller to do the mixing for you. The toe mixer, just to build one of those, you start with the back end of a rear-wheel drive vehicle, like generally a pickup truck, and you point the differential up instead of toward the front, and you make a trailer out of it. Of course, making trailers out of the back end of a pickup truck is a redneck thing as old as pickup trucks are. Then you get a 200-gallon feedstock tank, which is about 6 feet in diameter, and you have to cut a hole in the bottom of it for the differential, plop it on the trailer you just built, then seal it up so
Hmm.
it doesn't leak. And then you cut most of the drive shaft off and you weld a riding lawnmower blade to it. Uh, Now, what this creates is when you drag the trailer, the tow mixer, behind another vehicle, the wheels cause the differential to spin, which causes the lawnmower blade to spin, and it mixes your product. What's nifty about it is that the biggest motor you can really power from like an outlet socket in your house is around 1 to 2 horsepower. But your car or pickup truck has an engine in the 100 horsepower class. So when you're dragging this thing behind a car, you're having a much more powerful engine than
You
you
get
do.
some real torque.
So there's an enormous gap as for you as an individual non-industrial customer of the whole service environment. You have a lot more power there to apply. So so what you do is you put 200 gallons of water, 40 to 60 pounds of paper, and a bag of cement in the mixer, and you drag it about a mile. Half a mile out, half a mile back. By then, it is all nicely hydropulped Papercrete slip. At that point, you have forms. You have a lot of forms. They need to be simple and cheap because you need a lot of them. And what most of the builders did is they would make sure that their tow vehicle, which was probably a pickup truck, and the mixer would clear the forms.
Hmm.
So
You
most of
just
these guys were making like Adobe size forms. They're 4 inches high, 16 inches long, a foot thick. It's almost like a standard that the thickness of a Papercrete wall is a foot. And you drag the trailer over it, open the slip valve, fill it up. Okay, pull the car forward, do it again, pull the car forward, do it again until you have dumped 200 gallons of Papercrete slip into the forms. At that point, uh, you go have a coffee because it's going to take between a week and 10 days before you can remove the forms.
okay.
And it's going to take about 3 weeks to or more before you can actually use the bricks, before they dry out enough for you to actually build something with them.
So a week to take the things off, and then 3 weeks for it to actually be able to like hold
Right.
weight.
Because a Papercrete block like that's just been simply cast, okay, 80% of it is water. So you will have 20 pounds of paper and 80 pounds of water. And the water has to evaporate. Most Papercrete construction has been done in the desert in the American Southwest. And I actually went to a place. There's a bed and breakfast in Marathon, Texas called Eve's Garden. Do not put evesgarden.com into
About
your
to
web
say,
browser. That
that
does
sounds. That
not
sound.
go to
I
it.
was about to say that sounds like a slippery slope.
uh, but it's a very nice bed and breakfast, which has several units, a few of which are made of Papercrete. Or yeah, so it's like you can go stay there for a few days and stay in a room that was built this way out of Papercrete and experience it without having to build one for yourself first. And we went there a couple of times. I spent quite a bit of time with the guy who built those units. He was named Clyde Curry. Uh, he's no longer listed on their website. I have a bad feeling because he was my age, probably in the aughts when I was doing this. So he may have passed or he may have gone on to something else. But he spent a lot of time. He had spent a lot of time with a lot of the other people doing Papercrete. So when I told him, well, I read this in this book, and he's like, I know that guy, and this is like some, the dirty laundry and everything. So it was like it was very interesting. And he was very open. He showed me his techniques. He let me participate when he was doing a batch, and showed me how he did everything with his technique. And then told me, well, and these other people do these different things and stuff. So uh, it was really great. And it was also informative because in the desert, Papercrete performs really, really well because it is massive. It's not as massive as rock or brick or adobe, but it does have enough mass that it kind of has that quality. Like the walls of this house, right? This is a stick-built house. So the walls of this house are basically air contaminated by a little wood.
Yeah.
Okay. A Papercrete house has foot-thick walls that are really, really good
Insulators.
insulators. So you have a combination of the thermal mass and the insulation. It was striking that how, particularly the second time, the first time we stayed there, our room was straw bale. The second time I told Clyde, it was like, I really want to stay in a Papercrete room, and they gave
Stays
us an
cold.
upgrade. Huh? It
Stays
was it
cold.
uh, you walk into it, it was 100 degrees outside, it would be 70 inside. And well, there's no humidity because it's a
Yeah.
desert, so that's not a problem. uh and at night it was the other way around because the walls have thermal mass and they're good
Mhm.
insulators, so it'd be 40 outside because the desert does that.
Yeah.
It's like it's
Yeah.
100 in the day and it's 40 at night. But the room was like comfortable all the time. It's just like you didn't need climate control.
Hmm.
So that wasn't a fun thing to learn about it. Um, but the problem is, I was looking at building in Mississippi, which is not a desert.
No.
And Papercrete has a weakness, rather like Bruce Willis's character in Unbreakable. It's water.
Yeah.
Papercrete is an incredibly efficient sponge.
Gotcha.
So I did a few experiments. I started out doing experiments in my garage using a food processor as my mixer. And so I was making little bitty blocks. Okay. And I found that just putting one of those in ground contact here in southern Louisiana, even if it didn't rain, it would fill with water. It would literally wick the water out of the soil until
Wow.
it was saturated. And that makes it 5 times heavier, which is not a real good thing for construction materials. Uh, so the, like I said though, but there are structures, quite a few of them in the Southwest, that were built out of this because there it rains occasionally, and there are different strategies to deal with this. The thing is, you can't seal up Papercrete, because if you seal it and then water gets in anyway, then it can't get out.
Hmm.
So what most people do is they seal the interior. They build a wall and they seal the interior. They paint the interior and they leave the exterior exposed. That way, if water gets in, the water can then evaporate outward into the environment instead of evaporating inward into the domicile. Uh, there's also the matter of the roof. Okay, it's fairly straightforward. A lot of people make Papercrete bricks the size of adobes. That was what Clyde did. That's what he showed me, which is basically 4 inches high, 16 inches long, 12 inches wide. That's a standard adobe brick. The difference is a standard adobe brick like that weighs 60 pounds. The Papercrete one weighs 20 pounds when it's dry. When it's wet, it weighs 100.
Hmm.
Um, so The problem is you build the walls and you get to the roof. You basically got three options there. Option one is to try to build a papercrete roof, and which is really makes a certain amount of sense because you want the thermal insulation, the thermal mass, and everything covering the entire building. The problem with that is if it gets wet, something really bad could happen.
It's gonna collapse.
So option two is you just put a normal roof on it.
Yeah.
They build papercrete walls, and then you put just a normal truss and a metal roof or whatever on top of it, which is better than nothing. You've got a semi-win there over building the whole thing stick built. Option three is you build vaults. The walls curve up, meet one another, and you have an arch. That was the way the rooms were built at Eve's Garden, and that was what I was planning on. Because that way you have the advantage of the whole thing, and you get the strength of it, but you still have to manage the strength of materials and all. I taught myself several engineering courses that I did not actually take in college in the course of this project. So what got me onto this, of course, was Hurricane Katrina. And so this was part of the Hurricane Katrina freak out after we got back, and we were like, maybe we should bug out to the country. Well, and my wife was like, yeah, but I'm also like afraid of tornadoes, which is particularly in light of recent development was a very sensible fear.
Hmm.
So I was like, well, okay, so for if you want tornado proof housing, then and you want it for a price that ordinary mortals can afford, then you're looking at alternative construction. So one of the things that I did in the course of this little project is I installed a finite element analysis engine on my computer and taught myself to make models for it. This was it's a much more common thing today because they have slicers and all. You can just build your model with a 3D modeler, like, and just have the slicer make the elements. I had to write software to do that. It's a pain in the ass. But it was meant to run under Linux, but there is a compatibility layer that allows it to run under Windows. So I had to get that working. And then when I got it all working, because the commercial versions of these products, they charge you by the number of elements that it will support. So a good commercial finite element analysis machine where you can put a model into it and blow wind at it and put gravity on it and forces and shit like that, and then see where the stresses are and how, it's like, several $1,000s. The one that I downloaded was written by a graduate student. So how do I trust this program that was written by a graduate student when I finally get it working? I did that by modeling a bog simple square beam.
Hey, say it again.
A
Bog?
beam, bog simple.
What's bog simple?
It's
Is that a
just,
saying or like an actual?
yeah, it's just a saying.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Uh, so a simple square beam, which there are equations for
Mm-hmm.
in those textbooks that I had to start reading.
So you could, all right.
And so I could see whether the finite element engine agreed with what the textbook said a beam that size should do as far as deflection and stresses and stuff. And it agreed perfectly. So then I felt fairly confident doing things like vaults and trusses and stuff. Um, Yeah, I was doing all kinds of math, and that was one of the things Clyde Curry looked at me like I was from Mars. When I told him, it's like I figured out, you know, oh yeah, 1 cubic centimeter of papercrete contains 300 meters of cellulose fiber.
Okay.
And that implies a certain number of intersection points. And in Papercrete, what happens is those intersection points are sometimes knitted together by a Portland cement particle that grows spikes through them and clings them together.
X is a point of nucleation.
Right. So now the problem is that, okay, so the basic mix, and of course, all architectural papercrete mixes are based on tow mixers, 200-gallon batches. The basic single bag mix results in about 5 to 7 diameters of the cellulose fiber between likely binding points. And that means that that fiber is likely acting like what they call a long column in engineering biz, which means that if you put pressure on it, it will buckle. And I don't have, Clyde gave me a couple of bricks that he had cast. I threw them out a long time ago because I didn't have any use for them. But one of those adobes made of the thing, you can bend them. They're flexible. They're not completely rigid.
Mm-hmm.
They are pretty strong. You can stand on them. You can, you put enough of them together, you can park your truck on top of them, but they're not completely rigid. And that's because of the distance between the binding points of the fibers. Now, what most papercreters do, because once you've made enough bricks to build your wall, you have to connect them together somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So what most of them do is they do a 2-bag mix, which is the same formula. Uh, a lot of them put sand in the 1-bag mix. It makes the bricks a little heavier, a little more massive, gives them more thermal mass. I was never a fan of that because it doesn't add strength. In fact, it subtracts strength. But it was, it's a thing that they did. But for the mortar, most of them just, it was pure cellulose and 2 bags of Portland cement. And they would, so you put them together with like half an inch of mortar between them, and then you face the walls with the mortar because the walls are soft otherwise. That was a striking thing about the structures at Eve's Garden, is that they were massive. It was the temperature was great,
Soft.
the sound quality was great, but yeah, it was like it was organic. The whole structure
Weird.
would move slightly.
Even when dry.
Yeah. Uh,
Huh.
so one of the things that I did in the late going of my project, which was like 2000, mid 2006 to 2008, was I used my finite element analysis engine to analyze that kind of wall, because I had used the bricks that Clyde gave me and the samples that he gave me to measure the Young's modulus, how much it bent under what force, the tensile and compressive strength, what it took to rupture. I was measuring shit. And that was one of the things that impressed Clyde. It's like, this guy is doing metrics. It's like no, all of these guys are amateurs who did all this. They're throwing shit in the tow mixer, running around, throwing it together, and see what the wall does. I'm doing little samples in my garage, and I'm measuring them
Hmm.
with, you know, like scales and shit, because that's what I do. Uh, and so I made this finite, it's like I got all the parameters, and I made this FEA model of the basic papercrete wall where you make the blocks and put them together with the 2-bag finish. And I realized that the bricks aren't taking any of the load. All of the load is being supported by the mortar. All of it. It's like the bricks are not doing anything
Decorative.
except holding, yeah, except absorbing water.
Yeah.
So I actually was looking into several things toward the end of my project, and one of them was using cardboard boxes as the bricks, because that eliminates an entire very time consuming step. It eliminates the papercrete sponges absorbing water until the wall weighs 10 times what it did when you built it and all. Particularly if I was, because at the time, the company I worked for did not have offices on the West Coast. They actually do today, but now I'm too old and decrepit to think of doing a project like this. But so I had to think about doing this in Mississippi, which is a wet
Yeah.
environment. So water is a major problem there. And as I was looking, it's like, the paper, the bricks aren't doing anything. And it's like if you eliminate the bricks, then what you do have there is a nice cellular structure with a material that is fairly strong and stiff, the two bag mixed mortar, and it takes loads very nicely. So that was the thing I was looking at. But where I came into it, as an inventor, was when I was still doing the earliest models, where I was using a food processor as my mixer and doing samples that were like I could hold in my hand. Uh, I figured out that you could press the water out,
Oh.
and the cement would stay. And Clyde Curry himself told me he knew of a guy who had decided he was going to build a press to do compressed papercrete, but he made it watertight, because that's what you do when you're building a hydraulic press, right? And he forgot that water is not compressible.
Yeah.
What you have to do is you have to provide vents that are enough to let the water out, but
Not enough
that
for.
won't let the cellulose fibers out. And if by the time you get the slip into the form, you've mixed it, you've hydropulped it, you get it into the form. By that time, the uh, the Portland cement particles have mostly bonded to some piece of cellulose somewhere.
Hmm.
And when you squish it, the water that comes out is pure. It's perfectly clear. All of the
It's
cement,
probably super pure.
yeah, all of the cement stays with the papercrete, and you can squish it to about half of its original volume. That's where life got interesting.
You can
So
squish the dried brick to half of its volume.
no, all right. So when you're doing a simple papercrete thing, you just dump the slip into a form, let it set, okay, and then hope the water will evaporate someday. What I figured out is that you can dump the slip into the form and then put pressure on it and push half the water out,
Okay.
and it won't push the cement out.
Oh.
And then when you remove it from the form, it's actually very dense and much more structural.
Don't have to wait. Is there any benefit aside? I guess if denser and more structural. I was gonna say I thought the only benefit would be you just cutting the dry time down.
It does that too. The drying time goes down to less than really just a few days. even in southern Louisiana, because this is where I was doing my experiments. So, you're talking about 3 weeks in Arizona
Hmm.
versus 4 days in my garage
In a wet place.
yeah, to completely dry out in a place where the humidity is 60% all the time.
Yeah.
So what did I get out of that? Okay. This is compressed papercrete. And I used to have dozens and dozens of samples like this. I did a lot of experiments. Uh, you can tell this one's a little bent.
Yeah.
That's because I got into the habit of extracting them from the form that made them immediately. And sometimes they weren't entirely rigid by then. So it's like I pick
How
it
much
up
is
like
that? How much does that weigh?
this probably about 3 or 4 ounces.
Okay. I'm
So
trying
yeah,
to
it's
get a
very lightweight. It looks like concrete. It
yeah.
looks like it should weigh a pound or two, but
Yeah.
it's actually only a few ounces. And it is very strong. Uh, and not only that, can you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Uh, conventional papercrete doesn't do that. It's soft. If you whack it with your finger or a spoon or something, it doesn't ring like that. So this was like, okay, now how did I make this?
Yeah. Toilet paper roll? Or like there you go, piping. PVC.
Uh-huh. And this is a 2-inch diameter air cylinder. Now, this bimbo cylinder would have cost about $200. Okay. Uh, the reason I had it to do this experiment is, excuse me here, it took a joyride in a shipping container after Hurricane Katrina. And when the shipping container landed 15 miles from where it had started, the owners of the equipment in the shipping container asked us to refurbish it and make it all good. And one of the things that we did was replace the air cylinders, because you don't know what mischief they've got up to while they were in the shipping container being floated away by the hurricane. And so I intercepted them on the way to the dumpster. And I have two of them. That was one. That was the one that made these. And the other one made something I'm about to show you. So anyway, that was what taught me that this material could be made much denser and more rigid, and more importantly, less hungry for water than the parent material, because regular gravity cast papercrete will absorb 5 times its weight in water. This will only absorb about its weight in water, which is a big improvement. It's still not great. It's like, yeah, we lose 1 to 2 million people a year to war. That's still not anything to be proud of, but it's an improvement. Okay. But also this is not really a convenient shape to build something out of. So my next project was to make something that could make these. Yes, this is made of paper. uh, and this was made almost identically to the way this was
How much does
by
that one
squish.
weigh?
Huh?
How much does that weigh?
This weighs about a pound. The central, I made it out of 1-inch square tubular aluminum shapes. So it's 3 inches square in the middle and 5 around the perimeter. Uh, and as you can see, it's very regular.
Mm-hmm.
So you could imagine using this as a building material. I don't have the entire apparatus anymore, but I do have this is the exterior of the form that made this. And at one time, this was mounted on an apparatus very similar to that with a piston. One thing that I found was paper does not flow. So in
Float
my
or
first
flow?
flow. So what I found is that originally I tried to make a piston that had a center to make it a little hollow, to try not to make a solid block, like it's not necessary, right? What I found out is that when the center of the cylinder would reach a certain point, it would stop compressing. It didn't matter how much I crank the air compressor up to max and it wouldn't go any further, but the walls were not compressed. So then when I tried to remove it from the form, the walls would be all wobbly and shit and weak, because they weren't properly formed. So I had to make a two-part piston,
Mm-hmm.
and I would apply the pressure to it until it stopped, then pull the pin on the center element and let it push the walls up until they properly compressed. And I got these. Now these are pretty fucking rad.
Yeah.
I put one of these in the backyard in southern Louisiana, and you would think it's like termites will not eat this.
Hmm.
They apparently choke on the Portland cement particles, whatever. Mold will grow on them.
On
So,
okay.
because they'll get wet, but they don't lose strength. So this is a proper building material.
Yeah.
This is it's not quite as strong as wood, but you can form it into different shapes, and it doesn't have the uh, uh, the directional properties that wood does, where all the fibers are in one direction, because
Yeah.
they're all mixed up. So this is actually three-dimensionally stable product. You can use it in any orientation. Now, the problem that I had with it is that I couldn't control the z-axis very effectively, the thickness, this thickness. No matter how carefully I tried to control the amount of cellulose that I put in the mix, the final thing would vary by 5 or 10%. And if I tried to limit the compression to control that, then there would be weak spots. So that was a problem, because if your bricks are not all the same height, how do you build something with them?
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a dead end, but I learned a lot from it. That's when I thought,
Just make it solid.
okay, this brick is exactly the dimension that I intended it to be, within 1/100th of an inch in all three dimensions.
Hmm.
Now, if this brick isn't, how did I do that here?
Oh, it's simple. Oh. Oh. All right.
Compress it from inside.
Okay.
Okay, so that is where this form came from. And, my microphone cable just decided to, what the hell?
I can still hear you fine.
Yeah, but my
Those are wrapped on something.
cable decided to take a ride with my chair.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, that's where this form came from.
Jesus.
And yes, I made this in my garage. Okay.
All right.
So how does this work? Well, that's where you put the papercrete slip,
Uh-huh.
and this is what compresses it. And I spent 2 months figuring out how to make this dildo. It's like
I was gonna
it's
ask, what is that? All right.
it's latex rubber.
Okay, and then you just pump it up.
Yeah, so I had to make a form, and the ironic thing is, if I had done it 2 years later, I could have just had the damn thing 3D printed by an online shop, but instead I had to build a jig and use a trim router with a bunch of jigs and shit to cut these trenches in it and all. Then I had to mount the form that this is made from, in an incubator to keep it warm, and rotate it so that the rubber wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
drip off the bottom.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was a whole production to make this bladder. Uh, and I found out that I needed to compress it before inserting it because it
Mm-hmm.
displaced too much of the slip. So I had to get a vacuum pump, which there are vacuum pumps that work on the Bernoulli principle
Mm-hmm.
that are powered from your air compressor. So I would start, well, I would put the slip in the form, right? Then I would take the air compressor, I had a little valve thing here, and I would turn on the vacuum pump and suck this down. So it became a thin little thing, and then plop into the
Yeah.
slip in the form,
Then
and lock it in place. And I found that now, if I put more than 3 or 4 psi on that thing in free air, it would go pop like a balloon. But I
what
found
if it
with
has
everything
the
constrained in this form, then I could put 100 psi on it, and it would just squish the papercrete beautifully.
it's like the early rocket skins were so thin that the rocket could only stand up if it was full of fuel. If you just left it there, it was fucked.
Right.
Gotcha.
It's very similar to that, as a matter of fact. So then I squish it, so I put the slip in, you know, blow it up, squish it, pull this back out. Then how do I get it out of the form? Now, the way that I got, oops, excuse me, the way that I got the cylinders out of the form like this, okay, and this guy is, I would just take the top off the form and then put the air on the cylinder again.
And just
It would just come up like an elevator.
huh.
That doesn't work with this. Okay. So I had to come up with a mechanism to release it. And it's going to so it would
Okay.
open up like that. And I would do that
Just
when it was like this. This is why these ready bolt supports are here. So it would be just clearing the place where I wanted the final thing to drop. And yes, this was a lot of work to make. Also, this plastic, you might notice it's a bit thicker.
mhm.
The other form is made out of carving, just chopping blocks from
Yeah.
Walmart. This is ultra high density polyethylene. This plastic is $40 a pound
Fuck.
as pellets, and this form weighs about 20 pounds. Uh,
$800.
I intercepted it on the way to the dumpster. This was all stuff that was used to build something that didn't work, and they were going to throw it away. And I was like, put that in my car instead.
Yeah. Yeah. Fuck yeah. Hey Roger, real quick, Mopey commercial. Tell him where to get it. I gotta go to the bathroom.
Okay. Yeah. If you would like a copy of my book, The Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect, which a lot of people have liked, I encourage you to go to lulu.com. You will have to create an account now, because it is it has adult themes. It used to be freely available. In fact, when I first uploaded it, it was freely available. You know, I put I put age restrictions on it myself, and Lulu begged me to take them off because it was limiting the sales. And now, things being what they are culturally, they've put the age restrictions back on. So you have to create an account and assert that you are actually an adult. But if you buy it from them, it'll be the same price as if you buy it from Amazon or any of the other usual suspects. But I get a lot more money, like $6 instead of $1.50. Uh, on the other hand, if you got an Amazon gift card or 12 years old or whatever the thing is, then, you know, go ahead and buy it from Amazon. That is where I get most of my income, you know, from this anyway. I have a real job. It's all beer money. So it's all good. Um, it's just, you'd be doing me a solid and Lulu, because I've always respected them, because the way they approached the whole self-publishing thing when everybody else was doing the vanity publishing scam where you pay to have your book printed, and then if no one, you know, it's like then you're on your own to have it marketed. No, Lulu actually sets you up. Their whole premise is that they make money if you make money. So they have a marketing thing, they have a store, they do the whole thing for you, and they were doing that long before Amazon was. So give them a little love. That's
Thank you, sir.
the Prime Intellect commercial.
Thank you, sir. I've I've been, for a reason I'll explain another time. I've been drinking even more water than usual, and my God, is I'm feeling it.
Okay, so I invented that,
Mm-hmm.
and my plan was to make a form that would have 12 dildos instead of one, and be about a foot wide and 16 to 18 inches long, to make a truly building sized building block. And the idea there is that this material, once you've compressed it, you can remove it from the form almost immediately, and it
Okay.
will hold its shape. The other thing is that this material, what I envisioned was, instead of using mortar, which means mixing more papercrete when you're getting ready to build a wall, was instead would glue them together with wood glue, because they're dimensionally accurate. And that creates a bond that is stronger than the paper. And these surfaces don't need to be mortared. They're perfectly cromulent. They're, you know, you can just paint them.
Perfectly what?
Cromulent.
What's that?
It's another slang word for it. It's good.
Got it. It's Gucci.
So that was kind of the direct, you know, I was going in that direction there. I was also doing experiments because Clyde Curry had told me about his recipe for mortar and his papercrete recipes. And I was also doing experiments toward the idea of using cardboard boxes with 2-bag mortar, which would not be compressed, to create a cellular structure. that would be far stronger than a normal wall. And that all came to an end in 2008. And that was when I reached the point where I could not expand what I was doing without buying land, because I needed, in order to make one of these blocks, I was using a 2-gallon drum and a paint mixer as my Papercrete mixer. And I realized it's like, well, if I was going to do anything larger, I would have to at least get to the garbage can range, if not the tow mixer range. In fact, I was probably never going to get to the tow mixer range, because what I was planning to do was going to be a little more labor intensive on the making blocks part, but then it would be less labor intensive on the putting the blocks together to make a wall part. So that would even out. But so I was starting to look at land, and I was looking in Mississippi because the company I worked for had an office there then, and they didn't have any offices in the Southwest then. They do now, but now I'm also almost 60 years old, so this is not an approachable project for me. Yeah, because this was all 20 years ago. And I was having problems, because what I really wanted was somewhere between 3 and 5 acres. 1 acre was not going to really be enough land for me to do what I wanted to do. 20 was both beyond my needs and my means and my needs. It would be more land than I needed. And there were very few people selling parcels in between those two ranges. You basically had people who had subdivided their properties into residential lots, maybe large ones of an acre or so, but still, and people selling the back 20 or the back 40. And there wasn't a lot in between. So I was wrestling with that and looking for a way to deal with it. And then the housing market collapsed. And part of the plan all along at this point in my life had been that we would sell this place where I am now, and that would cover any loans that we might have to take out to finance the project. Well, it was becoming obvious that selling this place was going to be impossible. No one was buying anything. And so that kind of put a brake on everything. And then in 2014, I had to make a visit to the cath lab and have a stent put in. And I realized there were certain advantages to living in a city 2 miles from a hospital with a modern cath lab and, all that stuff. And so, being an older person, the whole dream that I had had my entire life of moving to the boonies and might not have been all that it was cracked up to be. So,
Even at
when
32, I like being about a mile and a half from like a fucking enormous hospital. It's
yeah.
just
Oh, my dad lives like in walking distance of a
yeah,
good hospital. So
yeah,
it's yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, so that changed my entire perspective on it. So when it did finally become possible, it's like, yeah, today I could sell this house very easily. But by, the late teens, I was like, no, I think I kind of like living here, uh, just because of, health stuff and convenience and all. So this whole project just turned out to be, I wrote about 150,000 words of notes on experiments that I did. Uh, this was like two years of all of my spare time went into this project. Clyde Curry, who met most of the people who have if you read any of the books where Papercrete is mentioned, people like Mike McCain, and there's a few other names, he met them.
Hmm.
He knew these guys. And he said he had never seen samples like these. This was a new thing. Um, but as with the guy who originally invented it in 1926, I think it just it's not something you can commercialize. Now it would be something really cool because the whole thing is we put billions of tons of paper into landfills every year. And this is a way to turn that into something much more useful. And
Hmm.
so it's a double win. Uh, but the flip side of that is we had overbuilt luxury housing in the years after '08. And so one of the reasons there were so many homeless people, it wasn't that there weren't homes, it was that the homes were too expensive, and there were too many of those too expensive homes, and not enough homes that an ordinary person could afford who was working a minimum wage job. So that kind of put another damper on the whole idea that I had had for my entire life of, you know, making housing cheaper and making it more accessible would be a wonderful thing. And it was like, well, that's not the problem
Yeah.
anymore. It's more that our economy uh, basically shot itself in the foot. And so we have all these empty homes that cost $400,000, and people who are homeless who can't afford that.
Yeah.
So, um,
Is there like a central repository of information to where you can sort of pass the baton to people that maybe are still looking at it?
not really. It's not hard to find information about Papercrete on the internet if you do the Google thing. It's one of those things that was really out there when the internet was first getting started. So the search engines are really well seeded
Yeah.
with the
They're
information.
indexed now.
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, it's like Mike McCain, the guy that invented the toe mixer, ended up making quite a little side thing, not building structures, but selling toe mixers. Because a lot of people who feel comfortable pulping paper, casting blocks, mortaring them together to make walls, all that stuff, are intimidated by things like welding
Hmm.
and the stuff that you have to do to make a toe mixer, to turn a truck bed into a trailer and all that stuff. And so he had quite a little sideline going for some years where that was what he did. It was he made toe mixers. I've actually seen one being transported here in Louisiana. I
Hmm.
was like, you know, just like because you don't just pull if you're taking it a long distance, if you have a tow mixer, you don't just tow it like a trailer because you'll wear it out.
Yeah.
The blade will fly off or something. So you actually have to put it on another trailer that's just a trailer. And I've seen that here
Yeah.
in Louisiana. Somebody was moving a tow mixer from one place to another. And I saw it on the interstate, and it's like, I know what that is.
Yeah.
You know?
So then I guess what I was asking about your notes and stuff is, if the guy Curry said that, you had done things he hadn't seen before, I was just wondering, like, what had you uncovered, or just through research, kind of created novel information that it wouldn't be world changing, but you could add to the database of whatever.
Yeah, well, at that time it wasn't quite as easy as it is now to disseminate information. And uh, I never really did anything else with it. I did leave him with a bunch of my samples,
Hmm.
and I know he was in communication with a lot of people, but no one ever got in touch with me.
Yeah.
So I
I was just
suspect
thinking of a way, so it, like, wasn't all for naught, I guess. That's how I was looking at it.
it was it, yeah, you could say it was all for nothing.
Well,
It's
well, That's
That wouldn't be an unfair reading of it.
well,
I mean, it wasn't for nothing because you know what? I had a lot of fun.
I was about to
I
say,
learned
man,
stuff.
I spent 4 years all day. You think I put a lot of time into the podcast? I know I keep interrupting you. I apologize, but I put so much time into Photoshop that sure I have like the merch store now, but that was primarily because I was like I just couldn't bring myself to throw it all. I spent probably more time doing photos. You just don't see it because that was private and the podcast
Hmm.
is public. But or even when I got into medical school and decided I didn't want to go, but I had all these insane study guides I had made, just these PowerPoints. I put them online. I literally just put them on Reddit and shit. And
Yeah.
for years later, I would have people emailing me. I never thought twice about it. To me, I put them up because I got in. So I was like, my time in the war is
Yeah.
over. So you can have all my weapons. I don't care. I'm out of here. I never gave it to anyone because I was like, I don't want competition. But what I had never anticipated was for like years later, until I got banned from Reddit, people would just message me though and be like, hey man, like, I can't I quickly realized like the main theme of all these emails were like, I can't afford Kaplan or exam crackers or the
Right.
Berkeley Review and what I had done is I had taken all of them, gone through each of them, and with my OCD found the overlapping or found
Well,
the
that's
part.
that's similar to the graduate student who wrote the
Sure,
finite element tool that I used, which was equivalent to commercial software that would have cost me thousands of dollars a year to license.
sure.
And once I proved that it worked, it was like, you know,
Yeah,
it answered a lot of questions for me.
yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, this is a public cast,
sure.
so if anybody is seeing this and is interested in my research, feel free. Uh, my contact info is at localroger.com. And I will be happy to update anyone who is curious about it. It's not a big secret. Uh, nothing about Papercrete really is that big of a secret.
Hmm.
In fact, there is a commercial product called Hardy Board, which is very similar to this stuff, but it's not structural. The ironic thing about Hardy Board is it's siding. It's sold as the product that you put on the side of your house to protect the plywood and the studs from the elements. And it's basically papercrete. In fact, it's basically compressed papercrete. I'm not quite sure what their process is, but no one is doing this as a structural material because that would require all kinds of weird changes to the building codes and all to allow it. I was totally working on the fact that I would be doing this in Mississippi where there are no building codes in rural areas. I was basically told by a county commissioner to my face,
Yeah.
oh yeah, once you buy a piece of land, if you have the deed to that, you can build a skyscraper, you can do whatever the fuck you
Just
want. The
fuck
only
the wild. Yeah.
the only limitation is if you want electricity run to it, you have to put in a proper approved septic system.
Yeah. I
But if
wonder
you
if
want to be off, but if you want to be off grid, put up solar panels, do all that, then you
go
can do
wild.
whatever the fuck you want. It's like no one cares.
I'm just trying to think of because I get like that's just I guess how I look at things. Like for me, like I don't regret trying to get into medical school. It's something I really wanted to do. But even just the very process taught me a lot about long-term
Hmm.
goals and consistency and whatever. It was kind of a cool bonus that people later were like, "Hey, that helped me get." To me, I was like, "Oh, there's a doctor, there's an additional doctor in society. That's not a bad thing." You know, if the podcast ends one day, there will be something that someone will gather, even if it's just like, hey, if you stick with it, it will work. I'm
Yeah,
just trying to think of paper. I mean, I wonder if it could be used for like emergency housing and like after a tornado or after like a fire, if you could throw shit up that doesn't necessarily need to last for decades, maybe it just needs to last for a month if there's like a benefit
yeah.
there.
It's well. The thing is, it's massive. By even though it's very lightweight compared to something like bricks or stone, it's massive compared to ordinary stick construction. Like I said, the walls of this house are basically air contaminated with a little wood here and there.
Hmm.
Okay. A papercrete wall is paper. It's 20 pounds per cubic foot through and through, which has its advantages for thermal things and all. And it's cheap because paper is a waste product, but it's also time consuming to produce. So there are limitations there. It's just one of those things where none of the bells all rung at the same time,
Yeah.
apparently. Now, there are a lot of structures that have been built out of it. If you go looking, if you put Papercrete into the search engines, you'll see a lot of little projects come up where you're using the food processor to, do little small stuff. But if you go looking for the architectural stuff, there's no shortage of it. There's lots of people who have built houses and buildings this way,
Mm.
uh, particularly in the desert, the American Southwest. And there's lots of anecdotes about it. And like I said, it's like I actually was able to go and spend 2 weeks, 1 week at a time, 2 years, about a year apart, at a bed and breakfast where the rooms were made of this material, and so I could experience the architecture. Uh, there's plenty of private individuals who have done this. So what I've done would be really cool if I was a younger man. Then I would certainly be looking at pursuing it, but uh my body gave me a warning 10 years ago that maybe I should stick closer to cities, and
Yeah.
they have building codes and they
Yeah.
don't like things like this. Uh, and plus the water control problem. I also did a lot of stuff about water control. I made a lot of samples where I put in additives to try and reduce the intake, and I was never able to create a sample that wouldn't saturate, but I was able to create samples that took a week or two to saturate. So if you're in an environment where it doesn't rain that much, then you could maybe let it saturate and dry out, which is
Mm.
what some of the people in the desert do. Uh, because it's like I know I read one account of people, and it's like they built a house that had it had a vaulted ceiling and everything was 18 inches thick, and they said, yeah, well, every once in a while it rains, and because it's a desert, but it rains and the papercrete absorbs the water, and they just let it evaporate.
Mm.
you know, because they had built it so strong that the additional weight from absorbing the water didn't compromise its integrity. Uh, so you've got to look at factors like that if you're thinking of doing stuff along these lines. I think I probably applied more math to this than anybody ever has. Clyde Curry certainly seemed to think that I had. Um, and it was an interesting and challenging project. The most challenging part, though, ended up being finding a place to do something on a larger scale, because this is a residential house in a subdivision. So I can't drag a tow mixer around the loop.
Yeah.
No one is going to put up with that shit
Yeah.
here. Yeah, and where would I put the structure that I built? It's and and in Louisiana there is a statewide building code, so I would have to deal with that. Plus my my backyard floods once in a while, so
Guess I'm
that's a
just
problem.
guess I'm just trying to think of like anything it could be used for. I don't know why the one thing that keeps popping in my mind, because I don't know anything about this. But I mean, they're constantly making like, you ever seen those towns that like the Secret Service will construct? Like these like little towns and shit, and it's for extreme driving. I mean, ask Dale about Delta Force. They go through these things all they're made out of plywood. You just constantly doing CQB in them. Even for some things like for high like VIP raids like on Bin Laden, like we built like a replica of the house, and so you can train on it.
Mhm. Yeah, I knew
Just,
about that.
but then again, it's not like the military ever cuts corners on cost. They'd be like, yeah, build it out of gold. They don't give a shit. So I mean,
Yeah. No,
I'm just trying.
well, they're gonna basically use Hollywood technology on
Yeah,
that. It doesn't have to be good. but it has to
Yeah.
look right.
Yeah.
It has to have the right dimensions, but it doesn't have to last more than 2 weeks.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And I don't think you're really gonna pit. Yeah, imagine pitching Papercrete to a bunch of like Dale guys who are training on like a life and death situation. Be like, yeah, it's got a lower carbon footprint. They'd be like, fuck off. Like
right. Yeah.
yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
I'm now I'm just well, I'm just kind of like taking it as a puzzle in itself to find out what it could be used for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it does make really good residential structures in places where you don't have building codes and you don't have a lot of rain.
Hmm.
So, and it never floods, which is a rather limiting factor, but that is also a rather large portion of the United States.
Yeah.
So it's I mean, I was looking at these challenges from the angle of doing it in Mississippi,
Yeah.
which was not a thing that anyone had ever done before. And as it turned out, I didn't end up getting to do it either because of other factors. But one day somebody might, if somebody is interested in that, and they see this podcast, uh, like I said, localroger.com.
It'll
Uh,
it'll be something that will come that someone will
yeah.
find a use for.
As with the original guy who invented the shit in 1926, uh, I don't expect to make a dime off of it.
Well, sure.
It's but it's interesting what it can do. I mean, it's like, this is a
Yeah.
cool little
So someone's
artifact.
gonna find a fucking use for it in a way that none of us are foreseeing. It's gonna be years down the road for some
Yeah.
weird thing that no one thought
The
of.
main, well, I mean, the main thing is that, billions of tons of paper go into landfills every year.
Yeah, you're
And this is a thing you can do with it other than putting it in the ground and burying it.
yeah. I mean, there's something there.
But, at the point where I got to where I was ready to do something real with it, the economy was like, no, you don't need this. Fuck me. That's
What was that ship they wanted to build in World War II? It was like the Hibbakuk or something. You ever hear about that? It was an aircraft carrier that would have dwarfed anything even today, but it was a
about the
make
one that made
of
of
ice
ice.
of
Yeah.
ice, but it was ice and I think wood pulp. It wasn't
Yep.
just ice,
Hmm.
and it was the reason is because they could make it absolutely enormous, and they
Yeah.
could put bombers on it that normally you couldn't.
The guy who invented the shit uh walked in on Winston Churchill in his bath and dropped the sample into the bathtub with him.
Hmm.
And they sat there watching it not melt.
Yeah, and I guess even then though, you're looking at total war and use of material and
Yeah. That was it. Is they were talking about building basically a floating island.
yeah,
And
it's gonna
it
be.
would have been,
Let me
you
look it
know,
up. I think it's
out
gonna
of
be.
ice. But
It's supposed to be ridiculous. Let me look it up. Yeah, I'm kind of
yeah.
at a loss then. I don't really know what it would be used for. The
Yeah.
Hibbakuk.
Well, that's another material. That's another one alternative material because you can tell I'm familiar with it. I know the story.
Habakkuk, sorry.
But again, it was never done because other things came to the fore. Uh, which is what happened to me. Is just, it's like, yeah, here I am after a lifetime of fascination with alternative housing, living in a stick-built house in a subdivision.
Yeah. The Habakkuk
So
it would have had a 2,000-foot runway. The
yeah, I
biggest
mean,
aircraft carrier today is like 1,100 feet.
yeah, you could make it would have been absolutely enormous and
Monster.
almost
Jeez.
impossible to destroy
Yeah.
by conventional fire. So they that was one of the things. Yeah, the British looked into that.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss then. I don't know what Papercrete would be. I guess it's what you said. It's what you keep saying is you're already creating the component. What can you do with it?
Yeah. So it's yeah. I mean, so I spent like 2.5 years of my life, you know, this is what I did when I came home from work every day. I did these experiments, uh, testing formulas, making adjustments, building forms, trying different things. And, I had gotten to the point, my next step would have been probably to build the larger version of the air compression form. And I wasn't sure how that would work with multiple bladders, because in some situations, one bladder will hog all the air. So I might have had to come up with a distribution system. I would have had to done tests on that. But there, I'm in a position where, in order to make enough slip to fill that form, I need a much bigger mixer than I had. I need a place to stage the materials. I need a place, I need a place to put the freaking final products and all. And I can't do that here.
Hmm.
This is a 50 by 150 lot, so it's, uh, that I was looking at land when I realized that the housing market has collapsed, and it was about 6 years before another house sold on the street. So, and by that time, I found out that I have coronary artery disease, and this was not a practical thing for me to consider trying to do it as an individual, building a house with my bare hands. So that kind of killed that dream. But I'm not sorry that I spent that time doing it. I mean, I learned an awful lot about the, properties of matter. I gave myself basically an entire uh, college course in engineering, figuring out how to deal with beams and loads and stuff like that. So,
And like that's the point is it maybe doesn't need a purpose in the traditional sense of what are you doing. Sometimes it's just, I mean, so like I play video games and you guys watch and like it's fun. But I mean, I did that, dude, for I did that for years. The same games I'm playing, sometimes I'd listen to audio, like right when I started the podcast, I would use it to listen to audiobooks. But before that, I would just, what's the point? Like tear down. What was the point of taking down the whole World Trade Center level? Either limitations on the computer, you gotta like remove. Sometimes it's just like it's just an
yeah,
itch that feel. Why does a dog scratch its ear? I don't know, man. Why does a cat
yeah,
sleep in the sun? Sometimes it's
no,
just like I like it. It's fun. It's a nice little. I like it. Like
this
it.
is this is dimensionally stable to within a hundredth of an inch of what I intended. This one of the things that might not be apparent about that form is that most of the parts of that form had to be accurate to within a hundredth of an inch in order
Yeah,
for it to fit together the way that it does. And I had to come up with garage techniques to do that,
that's fun,
because I
man.
don't have a machine shop.
It's
Uh,
fun.
yeah. And so, yeah, it was like, and I did it.
And I saw a meme the other day where it was like it's these guys somewhere out west or whatever, just these like dads that had put all their time and money together and they'd refurbished like an 1880 steam engine or something and they got it fully running, right? And like some woman on Facebook commented like men will dump thousands of man hours into repurposing a train instead of going to therapy. And somebody commented, no, this is guys doing therapy.
That is therapy.
It
Yes.
absolutely is. Like I've done therapy before, and sometimes there's no replacing it. And just like medication, sometimes you just need medication. But man, at
Yeah.
the end of a long day doing several podcasts, there's nothing I love more than just like, all right, we're running through Hitman this level, or even just like BeamNG. What are we doing? We're gonna drive each car off a cliff, and we're gonna see which one lasts longer. Why? Fuck off. I don't know. It's fun, right? And then there's real value. We're all hanging out and laughing about it, but it's just sometimes it's just it's
Yeah. Well,
fun.
I mean, I was completely alone when I was doing all this shit. It was,
Well,
but it was
yeah,
like, but I was learning about, you know, matter, the world, things that, it's like,
it's fun.
how does paper work?
It's
Y-
fun.
Yeah.
It's just
I mean,
fun.
how many people actually understand how paper works?
Yeah.
I figured out how many kilometers of cellulose are in a cubic inch of paper.
Yeah.
and how many intersections they form so that the Portland cement has, how many particles of Portland cement are there in a cubic foot?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
because the
that's like,
reason there, it's like, there's all this stuff, and what I found out was that most of the people who had been working on this had not actually gone down that rabbit hole.
yeah.
They were just throwing shit in mixers to see what would happen. I come up, and Clyde Curry looked at me like I was from Mars on my second trip to Eve's Garden, because I brought a bunch of these samples to him, and he was like, no one has ever made anything like this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, there's it's math.
Yeah.
It's
It
not.
does, it doesn't
And
all,
then of course I figured out that what he was doing was like, those Papercrete blocks you're making aren't doing anything. It's the mortar that's doing everything. It's a cellular structure, so it's extremely strong. It's monolithic because you're forming it all at the same time. There's no cold joints. So you could be putting that mortar on cardboard boxes. It would be just as strong. Oh, wait. And so I was like looking at doing experiments like that, but again, I can't do experiments like that here because there's not enough room.
yeah.
So that was exactly the point. I was looking at both of these technologies as possible spring points to doing something where I would live in the future after selling this house. And then I realized, oh, the selling this house part, that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
And if ever, it's like in 2008, no one knew what the hell was going to happen. It had just all, the bottom had fallen out. So, by the time there was light at the end of that tunnel, then I was having a stent put in, and I was an old man. I was like, oh, you got to be careful. It's like, yeah, living in the middle of nowhere, nowhere near a hospital, might not be such a good
Yeah.
idea anymore. Uh, Fuck, how did that happen? I used to be 20 years old. Well,
Yeah.
that was 40 years ago.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, that's how that happened.
but then there's shit like, it doesn't all have a profit margin. It's not all applicable into some real world scenario. But like the goofiness of like teardown, right?
Hmm.
It's like I can't take all this down. It's like, well, can we do a smaller level? And you do it. And you keep coming back to it. And finally you're like, I think there's like a method to do this, right? We gotta do this, gotta vacuum it, can't let it hit too hard here. It's gonna fall through the floor. And it's just this whole thing of like, and then you hit the moment of like it can be done, but now it's just how much time can I put into it? And then once you do it, man, it sounds like a joke, but like I really do take away value from that stuff. So when I find a huge undertaking, like I
No,
want
it was
to,
fun watching you do it.
like that
It was
alone is
like you could
fun.
see, I could see the pleasure on your face but you were conquering this stupidly ridiculous problem.
But then
And
that then flows into stuff where it's like it felt like forever, but you finally figured out. I do apply that to shit where I'm like, keep working on the podcast. It's just tear down scaled
Mhm.
up by 100. I'm like, it's gonna break. There's gonna be disappointment, but you are gonna hit the point where you go, fuck, and it finally finishes at 7 a.m. one night. And it's like, I did it. Like, dude, that's more fun than like conquering an army. Is just like, I did the fucking thing. That's
Yeah,
fun. Just fuck
it
off.
it
It's fun.
it is, yeah. I mean, I've done that many, many, many times in my life with the whole programming thing. And it's like, yeah, there's nothing quite like conquering a project, even
Yeah.
if it's not your project, if it's something, well, like it's like it's my motivational word is impossible. If you tell me that it can't be done, then
It's
the most fun thing in the world for me is
just
to
fucking
do it.
figure it out. Yeah. I
And
mean,
I was just I had a customer 3 years ago. I pitched them. They have a system. They have three truck scales spread out over like a quarter of a mile and an office, and everything communicates to a computer in the middle of it. And they keep blowing out the communication ports. So we've gone through like 2 generations of communication converters, and the one that we were using just became unavailable. Manufacturer stopped making it. And meanwhile, 3 years ago, I designed a radio system for them, and it's like we have a technology where we can just eliminate all of these wires under the ground that keep getting hit by lightning and do it wireless. And they were like, well, it's like we got some other wireless systems. They're not that reliable. And I'm like, well, this one actually, I believe this is very good technology. Uh, well, since then, we've put the same technology in at like a dozen other customers. And we've got a couple of service guys who just rave about how great it works. It's based on it uses the underlying technology of Wi-Fi, but it doesn't require you to connect to a network and establish a connection. It's peer to peer. But everything is error corrected. It's like if you send a message and you don't get an acknowledgement, then the program that sent the message gets a callback that says there's an error. It wasn't received, and you can deal with it. You can raise a flag or look for another path or whatever. So it was like, no, this is really good shit. This is better than the stuff that was before. Well, we pitched them to it 3 years ago. And they're like, well, we're thinking about it. So I actually built all the shit to retro their system. It's been in a cardboard box for 3 years. They had a purchase order last Thursday. Oh, yeah, we can't get any more current loop converters. So it's like, all right, let's go ahead and put the radio system in. I don't even remember how the fucking thing works.
Yeah.
It's like, it's going to take me half of next week to put it back together and figure out how to install it, because it's just been sitting there this whole time.
Yeah.
But it's on the other hand, it'll feel really, really good to fix this goddamn problem that has been a
Yeah.
thorn in our butt for the last 10
It's
years.
but it is like one of the simplest pleasures is just figuring something out. It's just
Mhm.
it's just great. Like it's just cuz like there's no who
Yeah,
gives
we're
a shit.
wired that way.
Yeah, it feels you got thumbs, you got eyes and ears. You can move around so much weight.
I
Sometimes
believe that there is a fundamental positive
I think it keeps you alive,
reinforcement.
man.
Yeah, I think there is a fundamental positive reinforcement that we feel to learning, even
Yeah.
when the thing we learn is negative.
Yeah.
And I
Absolutely.
think that explains a lot of weird things about the way that humans act. If you just say, well, there's a positive reinforcement to the fact that you learned something and that it fits within your world model and everything goes together, and all right, and then that just gives you a little frisson of nice feeling, right? Well, even if it's a bad thing, even it's like, oh, that
That felt bad.
touching the stove hurt, don't
Yeah.
do that again.
Yeah.
But I figured out that touching the stove is not a good idea,
Yeah.
so I'm good there.
Yeah.
uh well, yeah, and I think that there is an element of that is universal, that we we actually are positively reinforced on learning, even when what we have learned is something unpleasant.
Yeah.
The fact that we learned it is itself positively reinforced.
Yeah.
So that's a thing that I have, is that's one of those edge case things we were talking about, uh, that I've observed in a number of situations.
I think if I had to take away anything from it, is that it ultimately it helped me with daunting things in life, be it depression or anxiety or controlling what I eat or substance abuse or not being a good friend, is these things that just seem so like just like a 19-dimensional Rubik's Cube. Sometimes you can look at it and you're like, I have figured shit out before.
Hmm.
It just sometimes it just makes you feel less scared. You go, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I know like now, like, I mean, I still have problems, but like getting over losing a brother, terrible. But man, I still look at that all the time. No matter how fucked something is, I'm like, I can, I can do this. And sometimes it's a long like moving home with mom and dad when you're 26. I was like, this should take a couple months. I lived there for 5 years, but I look back at it and I'm like, it did eventually end.
Yeah.
So like, what's
You
in front of us? Okay, we
you
can figure
can
this
deal
out.
with it. You have the strength. You know that you have the strength, and that is a valuable thing
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be able to tell yourself.
It's yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I've been there, and nothing quite that bad. I
It's all
mean,
subjective.
but yeah. I mean, well, it's like I almost went blind earlier this year, and I was uh,
Yeah, fucked you
it
up.
it did. I mean, I was in a state of existential despair like I've never experienced before. In fact, my I was talking with my wife about it last night, and it was just like, even though I knew that there was a technology that was supposedly able to fix this, you're never completely sure
Sure.
until it's done. But what I was completely sure of, that I was too blind to drive the car anymore. I was coming home and I realized I have no business behind the wheel of a car. It's like I'm a responsible person. I am a very active driver. It's like and I'm not getting information that I need to pilot this vehicle the way that I need to pilot it. And when uh when it was all over and done, and I told my optometrist that he was just like, I wish more of my patients had that wisdom, but it also filled me with just overwhelming sense of helplessness, because in America, if you can't drive, you're fucked.
Yeah.
It's like our whole infrastructure is based on that. And it's like I wouldn't be able to drive, I wouldn't be able to read, I wouldn't be able to watch a movie or TV. I was like, I would, you know, I thought I would have very seriously considered suicide
Sure.
uh, if I went blind. It was, because it's one thing if you're a young person and you have a chance to, yeah, you learn Braille, you adapt to it and all. I'm almost 60.
Yeah. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's like, what the fuck am I going to do
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Uh, so, uh, and just the astonishing fact that the world will do this to you, and it was just, and it came out of nowhere. Uh, so it's, yeah, you're constantly, assaulted by, things. Most of them are little, and then sometimes they're things like that. And uh, that was one that just took me down. I mean,
Yeah.
I was, I was in this office and I just started crying so loud that my wife came and was like, "What's wrong?" It's like, "I'm going blind." It's like, and she was just trying to comfort me, and it was like, "You can't do anything about this."
But then even that is like you get through it and all the hurdles and the fear of like medical procedures. The
Mm.
takeaway is you probably feel a little less helpless now. You're like, this too shall pass. It's scary, but it's like, here we are.
There's that, and but it's also the other thing is that every once in a while I'll think about it and it'll just come back to me,
Sure.
and that overwhelming sense of despair, and I'll just find myself crying again, uh, and I think technically that's what PTSD is,
Sure.
uh, but and that may seem like a trivial thing
No.
compared to what other men have gone through to get
No.
to that point, but it's uh it's lived experience, it's, never expected to be there.
Yeah.
And, uh, but yeah, coming back to the thing. So, but yeah, so I wasted 2.5 years of my life doing fun shit like this. But on the other hand,
Not wasting, man. It's fun as fuck.
I did have a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's
I
fun
mean,
as fuck.
I was out in my driveway with the cylindrical form pressing a cylinder when a couple of Jehovah's Witnesses came up. And that was an interesting conversation.
But so one thing I kind of look at like tasks and stuff is like they're good little treats to get you to the end. So like I don't focus on like the huge picture of the podcast, or I'm like it probably I can graph it and go it'll probably become profitable in like 2 more years. You can't like rationally go, okay, only 2 more, like that's way too long. Like I break days, I
Hmm.
break it down into little days where it's like that's why I'm always like switching the video game. Once I've had the most fun with it, I move to something else because when I wake up, I instead of gonna go to the gym and then do 3 podcasts and then go to bed, you go, I have to do that for 2 more years. You go, fuck this. But instead, I'm like, I just gotta knock out these 3 shows today, and then I'm gonna play Sniper Elite with Ben, and we're gonna fucking shoot Nazis, and like we're all gonna be hanging out and chat.
Hmm.
That's like a little treat, and that pulls me through the day. And
Yeah.
then you look back, and 2 years goes by. So that's kind of how I look. It's like just these little things of like, just get to the end of the day. Just get to the end of the day.
Yeah. And one day you wake up and realize that you're 30 years older.
Yeah, yeah, that'll come too, and I'll deal with that shit when I get
I-
there.
I'm warning you that will
Yeah,
happen. That
I'm
just
I'm
just
very
just heads up.
I'm very
That's
my dad has given me the sage advice of don't get old. I've taken that and I'll I'll do something with it. But Raj, for now, let's wrap this up. I don't know if I have another podcast in 5 minutes. I haven't heard back from the guest, so I will or not have another show. If I don't have a show, we'll start the gaming stream early. If not, gaming streams probably start at like 8 or 9. It's gonna be a later one. But guys, go in the
Yeah.
description. Please go buy Roger's
I'll
book.
keep an eye on your Rumble channel. So
I'll try to get it up sooner than later. Um, but yeah, thank you for another Professor Roger episode. And yeah, guys, go in the description. Please go grab the book.
it's a
And
pleasure as always.
yes, sir. And I will see you on the gaming stream later.
Guess so.
Fuck yeah. All right, Roger. Much love. Guys, thank you for watching. Thank